So let's go over to Layla. Layla, have you done any lessons yet?
I have done one lesson with my student. She's a
Okay.
second grader, and I believe her name is Erin. I don't know. I don't really remember.
That's okay.
She's a second grader, and she doesn't really know a lot about chess, so we had to start from the basics. We got to learn a little bit about each other before we started, though.
Cool. What kind of questions did you ask Erin?
I asked her her name and does she have any siblings and stuff like that.
Yes, perfect. You can actually ask your parents like what kind of questions you can ask. For example, how many siblings do you have? You could ask, what town were you born in?
Do you have pets?
Do you have pets? Because when they say, yeah, I have a dog, and you say I have a dog, that's a whole conversation right there. Oh, what kind of dog do you have? Is it big? Is it small? And the more you have those kind of conversations, the more connected you're going to be with your student, and the more your student is going to like you. And I'm telling you, when you're a teacher and your student actually likes you, you can teach them so much more because they'll trust what you're saying.
That to make it not boring, like introduce like little mini games. Like we did Pawn Wars every once in a while, so she didn't get bored of just listening.
Ah, so instead of just lecturing, you are inserting games like Pawn Wars
Mm-hmm.
into the lesson.
Yeah.
It's brilliant. Alex, how did you know that that Vito, because I know Vito too. How did you know that Vito was ready to learn tactics?
So when I started teaching him like I was just like I was like showing him what a pawn was, and then his parents are like, Vito already knows like most of the basics, how pieces move, and so like then I asked him what do you want to learn, and then he was like, good places to start, things to do, and like beginning of a game, and like all that stuff.
Yeah, that's brilliant. You know what makes you a good teacher in that moment? Instead of getting mad at them for saying, oh, you could have said, oh, I want to teach how the pieces move. You ask them, oh, well, what would you like to learn? That's a great question. You understand? Asking a kid, what would you like to learn is showing them that you want to help them, that you're open-minded. It makes them comfortable. And then you actually know what they want to learn. They will be most engaged in what they want to learn. If Adi wants to learn about the English opening, then and he asks to learn about it, and a coach is able to provide that for him, Adi's going to be listening. If you come in and tell Adi, I want to teach you about the Roy Lopez, maybe Adi doesn't want to learn about the Roy Lopez. And then Adi's going to be drifting off the whole time. What a great question to ask a student. What do you want to learn? And so, going back to the quizzing, it's a really fun way to keep a kid engaged and help them remember. So if you quiz them on, what was this piece called? And you kind of highlight it with you share your screen and you highlight it. And now they have to think. It's one thing for you to tell a kid something, but then to make them think and try to remember, that's great too. For example, Reina, which is Mahavir, Mahavir is working with Ryan and Reina.
Yeah.
Reina? Reina didn't, I host like free chess classes that I go do in Bridgeport when things before coronavirus. And it was like groups of kids. Reina didn't talk to me like the first 5 lessons I was there. She was like that one kid. She was like that one kid in the corner that like looked like she hated me. I was like, that girl hates me. I don't know why, but she does. And she just, she's a bit shy and she just needs time to determine if she likes you or not, and she's gonna like you if you're just patient and nice. Now, I could show you a picture of her on my shoulders, holding a soccer ball, smiling in a picture. Like, she's my girl, like she tried to she invited me to her last birthday party. I didn't have time to go to it, but I almost went to a kindergartner's birthday party at her house. All right. And so this is a situation, Nitya, where you've just got to be patient. You've got to keep, teaching this person, showing up. By you just continuing to show up and trying to help Kimberly, Kimberly will end up loving you for that. It's just going to take time. It doesn't happen overnight. You understand?
Yep.
You can go to friends. All right. So I'm going to go over to friends. And you can find your person. So I'll sign Sebastian. You can go here to games. And you can look at their games. So you can see that Sebastian and I played a game not too long ago. And you can press analysis. And now the computer is analyzing this game. And what I like to do after it finishes, I like to go through the game with him. So I'll be like, all right, Sebastian, you were white, I was black. And then we go through and I might just mention, you might explain why the computer wanted to do this. You know, the computer will tell you that this is a better move, but it's not like it's explaining why. You know, this controlling the center more, dominating the center, and how important it is to control the center. But then I'll mention to him that, dude, you castled, which is not like a bad thing. You know, it's like still a good move. You castled, you know. And so you'll see here that he developed both this. So then I might stop and comment, good job developing both. You can highlight pieces like this, both bishops and knights. You have an escape route for your queen or your king. You know, you might want to get this queen off the back line. Now we've got a bishop that's kind of stuck here. And now so we can talk about our first mistake in the game, right? He takes here. You can see over here, this is really effective. See, it says 0.67. Now all of a sudden black's winning by 3.84. But it doesn't really tell you why. So you can tell him, well, why that was a bad move.
I just did it because there was nothing else to do. So
Right,
I just,
guess what? I wouldn't say, Sebastian, I wouldn't say to you that that's a bad move. I would say, Sebastian, that's interesting. Why did you make that move? So, Sebastian, why did you make that move?
Well, instead of getting captured, I just thought maybe before I get captured, I should just put some meaning into it instead of just get captured right away.
And Adi,
Captured.
Adi, is that a pretty good reason though? Like, would you say that does that reason at least make sense?
I mean, yeah, if your piece is getting attacked and you can't go anywhere, you might as well take out a piece with you.
And there you have it. How much better was that than just saying that's a bad move? Now my response is, okay, Sebastian, you're right. Like, you did just get 1 point. How many points did I get though?
You got 3.
I got 3. And then I'd say to Sebastian, now Sebastian, I want to ask you a question. Why do you think anybody would ever sacrifice a bishop for a pawn? What's the point of that? Is there a point of ever doing that?
Not really.
So if Sebastian says not really, I'd say, well, Sebastian, some people do it in games. High-level players have done it before. So can you tell me why you think that there's potential that sacrificing a bishop for a pawn might be a good idea?
Well, you do gain their material, and you do gain material, but even though they get material, you still have another bishop, but you ruin their pawn structure.
Oh, so now you're talking about ruin their pawn structure. Well, what if you ruin their pawn structure so much so that your queen could come into that gap and maybe checkmate your opponent? Would that bishop for a pawn be a good sacrifice?
Maybe, yeah, if it actually means something and makes a weakness in your opponent's pawn structure.
Do you see, guys, Mahavir, how I guided Sebastian to that idea rather than insult him saying it was a bad move and then just tell him how it should have been? Do you see how I guided into that? I asked him first, I said, that's interesting. Why did you do that? And then I said, I see your point there. Here's my rebuttal. Is 3 for 1 good? And then he'd say no. And I'd say, well, is there ever a situation where it is good? He'd say no. Well, I say, well, why does it happen then sometimes? And then he thinks about it. And then he maybe says something that like resembles the right idea, where he said, oh, well, it messes up pawn structure. And I'm like, oh, there's my chance. Like, okay, so you just said it messes up pawn structure. Well, what could happen
with messed up pawn structure. You see how we're having a conversation? And then he says, well, open pawn structure means gaps. And I said, well, what if a queen went in that gap? And he says, oh, well, that could be checkmate. And then I go back to the question again. I say, well, do you think that a bishop could ever be used to take out a pawn and it'd be a good idea? And now he says, yes.